here are some 5 harsh truths that your realtor may not be telling you. Right now, we're seeing one of the craziest markets that we've ever seen in Greensboro, the Triad area in the last 2 decades. Let me tell you a little bit about what's happening. More than half of Greensboro homes are selling below the asking price. We're at about 60 or 70% of homes are selling below the asking price. And some sellers are pricing their homes for what their neighbor got 6 months ago instead of what's actually happening right now. Sellers need to actually look at what's priced on the market and what's happening right now. And then buyers, they're having a little bit of a hard time too. A lot of buyers are seeing this market as oh, this is 2008 and we can just lowball everything. Not every lowball offer is going to get you the house. And not every lowball offer is a smart offer. And waiting for the perfect house or the perfect interest rate is going to cost you a lot more because the appreciation rate is still pretty high. Also, you'll hear me say this a lot, but there's no such thing as a perfect home. And if you have in your head the perfect home's out here, you're never going to end up getting a house because you're going to always think that there's something better that could just be about to list. So before you buy or sell in Greensboro, here are some 5 harsh truths that your realtor may not be telling you. Before we dive in, I'm Grace Clifford. I'm the owner of Living in Greensboro with Grace. I am a local expert in the Triad. I service the whole Triad area. If you're thinking about buying or selling, I would love to help you. I navigate the Triad every single day and I'm constantly looking at the numbers and the stats so that I can continue to be an expert. Overpricing the market can cost you more than a price reduction. It cannot cost you way more than you expected. Back in 2020 or 2021, a lot of sellers would test the market, and that's when they would put their house in the market and see if they got any nibbles for it. Now, with the market shifting how it is, that can actually hurt you way more than help you because buyers have so many more options right now. The inventory is a lot higher, so they're just going to skip over yours. And then if you decide, okay, now we really want to sell it in a month or two, well, you've already had all that exposure and people are going to see, oh, they tried to sell it 2 months ago and it didn't work. So what's wrong with the house? Greensboro is not one uniform buyer's market. And entry-level homes can still sell quickly, but testing the market and not having a strategy is going to end up costing you tons of money. The other thing I tell my sellers is if we start at the price of the market that you want, even if the stats don't uphold that, testing the market and starting there is going to hurt you because when we do a price drop, then buyers already have, oh, well, no one else has bought this house, so why should I buy it? Is there something wrong with it? And then when we end up chasing the market when we do price drops because we're trying to get to what is considered a marketable value that this buyer wants. And sometimes we end up going past that. Great example, I had some sellers, we listed their house in March. Their house, I suggested a list price of about $550-ish. And I said we painted, we did some staging, maybe $570, maybe $580. They said, hey, our taxes came back. We want to go higher. We want to go to $700. I said, you're not going to get that. So they're like, okay, how about $630? And I said, And so we ended up listing at $630. Well, we've been chasing the market and there's been price drop and price drop and price drop. And now we're past what I originally suggested because there's this stigma about the market now and about that house where buyers are like, okay, well, it's been on the market for months. What does that mean? Is there something wrong with it, even though there isn't? So now our strategy has to change to make sure it sells. And currently we are taking it off the market. We're doing some refreshing. We're doing some updating. We're replacing some carpets so that we can go back on with a fresh face. But if we had started that price at the beginning, they would have ended up making more money that way. One of those cautionary tales. And if your agent is saying yes, oh, you want to list it at that? Great, we can sell it for that. And they're not offering a lot of statistics. They're just telling you what you want to hear instead of what you should hear. That could cost you money. The first days on the market usually bring you the biggest attention and the most interest. If the buyer immediately thinks the price is wrong, they scroll past it. After several price reductions, buyers start wondering whether something is wrong with the house. And just remember, your neighbor's listing price is not proof and value of your house. Some agents give sellers an inflated number simply to win the listing, or they say, oh yeah, we can sell it for that just to win the listing. And that's called buying the listing. And the seller often pays for it later. You want to make sure that the agent that you're talking to really knows the market and isn't afraid to tell you the harsh truth. You do not want to spend 3 months chasing the market down to the price buyers would have paid during week 1. Harsh truth number 2, your renovations aren't worth what you spent. I see this a lot. Sellers understandably remember every dollar they invested in their home, and they think that it's going to be a dollar for dollar return. Buyers are comparing the entire home against the competition. And a lot of things that I see sellers do that they think are going to be a huge asset actually isn't. One of the things I see countless times is sellers will say, oh, we did all this plantation shutters, so now there's custom blinds or custom plantation shutters throughout the whole house, and it cost us $10,000, so we can add another $10,000 to the price. And the harsh truth is no, that's not the case, because buyers are really just going to expect that in a home. That's not something they're going to really pay more for. They're just going to look at the comparable homes and they're going to expect that. Same with ceiling fans. A lot of times sellers like to point out in every room how every room has a ceiling fan. And buyers are just going to expect that, or they're going to skip over a home if it's important to them that doesn't have ceiling fans. The main things that we see a return on investment are things like the roof, things like updating your HVAC system, getting a new hot water heater, and then what we really see return on investment is if you do renovations for like a kitchen or putting a new deck on the backyard, landscaping. But adding some crown molding to a room, while it looks really nice, is not going to be a return on investment, and some buyers may not even care about it. And these types of improvements, they may have your buyer choose your house over another, but it's not going to make them want to pay more for that house. It might just have them choose it if it's the same price. The improvements that protect values are usually less exciting. They're the ones that are like getting a new roof, maintaining or getting a new HVAC system, doing a crawl space renovation or controlling crawl space moisture, doing any kind of plumbing and electrical issues, and then maybe renovating the kitchen. Those are things that we really see a return on investment. Maintenance protects value. Personal taste does not automatically create value. Harsh truth number 3, concessions are back, but the highest offer isn't always the best. Both buyers and sellers need to evaluate the entire offer, not merely the headline piece, as a lot of offers are going to be asking for concessions, and a lot of sellers are going to start giving concessions because they're competing against other houses on the market instead of buyers competing against other buyers for the same house. In the latest data, about 60% of Greensboro homes sold below asking. That does not mean every seller is desperate. It means that negotiation becomes normal again. Buyers are requesting things like concessions, repairs, they're asking for lower purchase price, and they're also asking for rate buy downs. Rate buy downs are huge right now because the rate right now is a little higher. And sellers need to compare the offer's net proceeds and the likelihood of actually closing. One thing I like to tell sellers is like, okay, yes, this offer may be asking for $10,000 more, but think about if we don't close right now.
Think. Think.
And we have to wait another month and a half on the market. We're probably going to do a $10,000 price drop anyway if we have to wait another 6 weeks or 5 weeks. This is one that's in hand. Maybe we can negotiate a little bit, could get it closer to like 6,000 or 7,000, see what the buyers are agreeable to. But one offer in hand is worth 2 in the bush. Other things for sellers to consider: financing strength. Is this a cash deal? Is this a conventional loan? Is this an FHA loan or VA loan? Due diligence and earnest money. Due diligence is a great way to see if a buyer really loves the home and how serious they are, because they'll offer more due diligence most of the time if that's the case. Contingencies. Does this buyer need to sell their house first? Requested buy downs of rates and closing timelines. Those are all things that go into the offer as a whole. Whereas, one offer might be priced higher, but if it has a long list of those things, then this lower price offer might be better. And for buyers, closing cost assistance might be more valuable than having a price drop on the house. A lot of times I will encourage my buyers to get closing costs covered because that's less money out of pocket, or they can use it as a buy down of the rate. I repeatedly hear from lenders I worked with that I'm the only agent they know that does this, where I will offer my buyer's negotiation of saying, hey, why don't we take that $10,000 that the sellers are giving us and put it as concessions to buy down your rate? Because if we take that $10,000 just off the top of the total purchase price, your mortgage may be $50 less per month or $30 less than it was originally. But if we take that $10,000 and we put it in concessions as a buy down for rate, then your mortgage is going to be about $200 less than it was before. And $200 less over 12 months, over 30 years, that really adds up. And time again, the lenders I worked with say, Grace, you're the only agent that understands this concept. I've tried to teach other agents and they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then they'll forget about it. I don't know why that is. I know that I really care about my clients and I really want to protect them and look out for their best interests.
You know I sound like a broken record, but we are buddies. You're my best friend. That's it. You're my best friend.
But definitely make sure you talk to your realtor about that, because that is going to save you more money over the long course of your mortgage and upfront too. And sometimes sellers prefer that. Sometimes sellers, they just have a number in their mind that they want to see on the sold for sign. And they may be, even though that amount of $10,000 is the same, they may be more willing to give that $10,000 as concessions instead of taking it off the purchase price. I don't know what it is about sellers, but I've seen that a lot too, where they have it in their mind that they really want to sell their house for $400,000, and so they're more willing to give you $10,000 in closing costs instead of selling it for $390,000 because they want that to see that number of $400,000. Again, they're still giving you $10,000, so I don't know why that's the case, but I do see that a lot. Another thing your realtor may not tell you. Price gets the attention, but the terms actually determine whether you make it to closing or not. If you want me to run real numbers for you and for your Greensboro move, not just give you a generic answer, my contact information is below, including a link for buyers and for sellers where I can give you a comparative market analysis of your house if you're selling. Or for buying, I can help you figure out like what you potentially could get. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to help. Harsh truth number 4. Waiting for the perfect rate or perfect house is not a strategy. I cannot say this enough. And I've had like 1 or 2 clients where they almost see this as harsh because they've had in their head that they're going to find the perfect home. And when I gently say, hey, the perfect home doesn't exist, they're like, oh, well, you don't know. I'm going to find one. I'm like, no, I'm not saying you're not going to find a great house. You're going to find a house you love. You're going to find a house that fits your lifestyle. I'm going to help you find a house that you love, that fits your lifestyle, that is in the area you want. But perfect homes don't exist. My clients that have millions of dollars and do custom build homes, even 6 months later, they're like, oh, I wish I had done XYZ. The perfect home does not exist. And similar to if you're dating someone and you think like, oh, well, that perfect person is out there and you miss the person in front of you because of that. Or if you're going to college and you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to find the perfect college out there, and you never can settle down because you keep thinking the perfect one's out there. It's the same with a house. If you think that perfect house is out there, you're never going to get to a house that is good enough because something in your head is bigger and better. And you're going to think, oh, the perfect one is right around the corner. And then I've seen it happen where I had a buyer where we worked together for almost 3 years because they had that in their head. And it got to the point where I had to sit down and tell them like, hey, do you actually want to buy a house? Because I think what you have in your head doesn't exist, especially for the price point and everything. And we had to have a little bit of a come together moment of, okay, yes, like let's get serious, because the house that you could have bought 3 years ago was $30,000 less than it is today. That same house is now $30 more. That's the other thing about Greensboro is we have appreciation and we have a lot of people moving here. So our appreciation rate is about like 10 to 20,000 per year. So if you're thinking about like, okay, I want to move here, I want to buy a house, and you're like, oh, I might rent a year, or, let me take a couple years, can you reasonably save $10,000 on top of whatever else you're trying to save for your down payment? Can you save an additional $10,000 or an additional $20,000 in 1 year? Most people can't. So just something to think about. And that goes for the perfect rate too. A lot of times I hear buyers say, oh, I'm going to wait for the rates to drop. Well, you and everyone else are also waiting for the rates to drop. And so when they do drop, that's when everyone's going to flood the market. And that's what we saw in 2020, where yes, they were super low rates. And I will tell you, we are never going to see a 3% rate again. That was a very specific situation because of COVID and the whole world shutting down, and everything had to perfectly happen for that rate to happen. But when that happened, that's when you saw houses sell for $50,000 over. That's when I'm putting in offers, and we're one of 40 offers on the table, and people are offering $20,000, $30,000 over. So yes, you get that really low rate, but then you're paying $20,000 or $30,000 over. There's always a little bit of trade out, and with the high rate, I know high rate isn't great, but with the high rate, there's less buyers, which means more negotiation, and we can do that buy down rate I was telling you about, where we can maybe not get it to 3%, because again, that's not going to exist again, but we can get it lower to something that you like, or you get the house that you really love, and then when the rate does drop, you can refinance. You want to think about the whole monthly payment, not just the rate. You want to think about principal, interest, property taxes, HOA, insurance, real estate maintenance expenses, and you want to make sure that you stay in the home long enough to absorb and eventually build equity to absorb any selling costs. Just because as it takes money to buy a home, there are selling costs for closing costs and things like that too. I usually advise people that you don't want to buy a house if you're going to live in it less than a year or less than 2 years. Around 2 years, you have a good amount of equity built in that it will help cover the cost of closing. Because think about it. If you are in a market right now where you're asking the seller for $10,000 in closing costs and things like that, well, if you buy your house right now and you turn around to sell it, it might appreciate $10,000 next year, but you might also need to give $10,000 in closing costs. And then that $10,000 has to go to paying for closing. So just something to think about. Definitely 2 years is a good amount of time, or longer, of course. The longer you're in there, the more equity you build. And because the perfect house doesn't exist, I usually suggest that people think about true non-negotiables and then strong preferences. I usually say think of like 3 deal breakers or 3 strong non-negotiables, and then think of like 3 or 4 or 5 strong preferences that, like, if it doesn't have that, it's not a deal breaker, but it's an extra bonus if it does have that. An 8 out of 10 home in the right location with a comfortable payment can be a better purchase than waiting for a 10 box check or a 10 out of 10 home that may most likely not even exist. And also, if you rate a house 8 out of 10, most of the time there are things that you can change to make it closer to a 10 later. Things like painting or doing some landscaping or changing up the kitchen or the carpet. They're all things that you can do to add equity to your home and also make it more your taste. So the main thing to keep in mind is don't buy because you're afraid of missing out, but don't wait because you're pretending you can predict the market or because you think the perfect house is around the corner, because it doesn't exist. And that's one of the harsh truths, and that's why I'm going to tell you the harsh truths, even if they're not maybe what you want to hear. Number 5, most buyer leverage doesn't make every lowball offer smart. In other words, doing a lowball offer is not always the smartest strategy. A data-packed offer creates leverage. A random lowball can end the conversation, and I've seen it happen where sellers are insulted and they don't even reply. I've been on the seller side of that, where we received an offer last summer and the sellers felt so insulted because it was very, very low. They told me, do not even reply to them. I had the buyer agent reach out 4 or 5 days later. Hey, what do they think? And I said, I've been instructed to not reply to you. And he gets on the phone and he's like, what's going on? And I was like, honestly, like, they were really insulted. They said not to reply. Maybe try again. And then they came back later. Those same people a week later came back with another offer that wasn't so low. And then we were able to start talking, because I told my sellers, like, okay, like they did a little better this time. Let's start the conversation. But if you didn't have an agent on the sell side that was, trying to get the deal going, or if you didn't have if you had an agent on the buy side that was like, oh yeah, let's do a really low ball offer, it could just completely end the conversation and you may not even get the house. So just keep that in mind. Strategy isn't just trying to do something low and see what sticks. You got to think through the data and about why you're doing this and what supports that offer. Because there's other things to keep in mind. If the seller just reduced the price by $20,000, asking for another $30,000 might leave a bad taste in their mouth. But if it's been sitting on the market for 2 or 3 months with no price drops, then offering like $20,000 or $10,000 below might be a really great offer. A couple of things that you can think of or have your agent think of. are recent close comparable sales. What are things selling for in the neighborhood? The home's condition, days on market, price reduction history, likely appraisable value, and then the seller's known priorities. If you know that the sellers are motivated and they want to move quickly, then that might entice a lower offer. If you know the sellers have all the time and they don't really need to go anywhere, it might be a little different. Seller may decide to wait and rent the home out or reject the offer. Sometimes the smartest negotiation is a full price offer with closing costs or a buy down rate or negotiated repairs. Then the seller feels like they're working with someone that is respecting their home and them, and we can still get a lot of money in cash for you in closing costs and in buy down of the rate, and it can kind of become a win-win for both parties. I've learned when there is a feeling that the other party is working with you, whatever side you're on, if you're on the seller side or on the buying side, usually people are more willing to work with you if they feel like you're working with you from the beginning. In other words, I've had a lot of times where I'm on the buy side and the sellers are like, oh, hey, yeah, we're under contract. We're so happy. Also, we just noticed that the washing machine broke. Don't worry, we're fixing it now. We're going to make sure it's taken care of. That is like their showing of good faith to the buyer to say, hey, we're already taking care of this for you. You don't even have to ask. And that shows the buyer, okay, these people want to work with us. And then the buyer may be more willing to say, okay, well, I don't need to ask about, them to repair a burnt out light bulb. That's really silly. I don't need to ask about this thing for repair. I'm going to ask for the major repairs. Likewise, other way around, the buyers can say, okay, I want to work with the sellers, so I'm going to, offer higher due diligence, or I'm going to maybe not ask for closing costs and buy down of the rate and, a price drop. I'm going to just do one or the other. And then say, okay, yeah, I'm okay with this, we're okay with that. And the sellers can see, oh, okay, these people are trying to be reasonable. A lot of times, those are the deals that end up working the smoothest, is when both parties get a sense of, okay, we're on the same team. Because at the end of the day, we're all having the same goal of closing. Yes, I'm representing one side and another agent is representing another side, and I'm trying to get the best deal for my clients and they're trying to get the best deal for their clients. But we all have the goal to close, and we all want to cross that finish line where the buyers get their new house and the sellers get to sell their house. And so your agent should be willing to tell you when to push harder and when the deal in front of you is already a good deal. The goal is not to win the negotiation emotionally. The goal is to get the best home and terms your numbers can support. So 5 truths are: overpricing follows you. Renovations do not return dollar for dollar. Concessions and offers terms matter again and are starting to matter more. Perfect timing and perfect homes do not exist. I cannot say it enough. And I hope that you'll start to hear that too if you're thinking about moving here. And buyer leverage only works when it's backed by data. If you're thinking about buying or selling in the Triad, please reach out. I'd be happy to help you. My team and I, we are in the market every single day. I'm constantly looking at the data and the numbers and the statistics, as well as constantly looking at homes. And I would love to make sure that you get a home that's the right fit for you. My contact information is below. Feel free to check it out. I also have relocation guides and neighborhood guides. If you're relocating here and you want to get an idea of what's around you or what neighborhoods are top in appreciation or top for school zones, let me know. I'd be happy to send them to you. And please be sure to like and subscribe. That way you always can see when the next video is. I try to put videos out once a week. And check out my Instagram. I also do a whole lot of hidden gems around Greensboro called Grace's Places, where I take you to all of my favorite local businesses and show you the best parts about living in the Triad. For now, I'm Grace, and this is Greensboro with Grace. I hope you have a great week. See you next time.